Different clubs have different structures of how they actually run their meeting. Some table topics will be at the beginning, some it will be later in the meeting. One of the elements I want you to pay attention to is the timing allotted for the table topics evaluator. This is very important. If we have table topics segment of 10 minutes, now 10 minutes really for table topics should mean you have about 3 speakers. And this may sound strange to some of us since table topics is 1 to 2 minutes. Remember, there's going to be an introductory part before calling the speakers, there's transition in between, and then there's a conclusion. So 10 minutes, really, the maximum you can take, if you're going to keep to that time, is about 3 speakers. When you're evaluating speakers, ideally, you have about 2 to 3 minutes for standard speech evaluation. But the person preparing the agenda, maybe the vice president of education, the Toastmaster of the day, may have allotted some arbitrary amount of time for table topics evaluation. They may say 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 4 minutes. Knowing that you most likely will have 3 speakers, you need to address this. Worst case scenario, I hope you will have 1 to 2 minutes to evaluate each speaker. And if we're looking at 3 speakers, that means you should have 6 minutes. If you're saying 2 to 3 minutes, that means you should have 9 minutes. This is rarely done in a lot of clubs. If you're playing that role and you see the agenda advance, please address this. I don't think the time allotted for the table topics evaluator is sufficient to cater to 3 speakers, with the assumption that 10 minutes can take 3 speakers. Note, that does not even factor in the fact that you may have to evaluate the table topics master. You do that when you have sufficient time. All this should be done prior to the start of the meeting. Familiarize yourself with the agenda, when the segment is going to occur, how much time you have allotted, and if it's feasible to tweak it to ensure you have sufficient time, please address it with the Vice President of Education or the Toastmaster of the day, whoever is responsible for preparing the agenda. All this should happen before the start of the meeting. During the course of the meeting, what should you do as a table topics evaluator? One of the things I like to tell people is, know what you are trying to achieve. As an evaluator, what is your primary objective? I believe as an evaluator, your objective, primarily 2 things. 1, you want to give an evaluation that will ensure that speaker continues to speak. 2, you want to give an evaluation that will ensure that that speaker, the next time they speak, they'll be better than this time that they are speaking. Table topics portion of the meeting will permit both members as well as guests to speak. And this is important because some of our members, most likely, especially guests, they may be very scared when it comes to public speaking. In fact, it will take a lot of encouragement to get them to step up to the lectern and speak, or our virtual screen, now that we have a lot of meetings in the virtual space. As an evaluator, please put this in mind. Why? You should not be evaluating seasoned speakers the way you're going to evaluate people that are just starting and are really scared of speaking. Seasoned speakers, you may give them more areas of recommendation. For people just starting out and they are scared, give them more commendations. For us at Toastmasters, we use the CRC method: commend, recommend, commend, when giving evaluations. For table topics evaluation, I highly recommend that you please evaluate each individual speaker. Don't give a broad summary. And many times that the broad summary is given, either the table topics evaluator was not aware of how it should be done, or the time given does not permit to do individual evaluations. if at all feasible, give individual evaluations so people know what is for them. They can take it back, apply it, come back as a better speaker. Very important. As a starting base, I say you can do the 2-2-2 system. What do I mean by this? You can start off with 2 commendations, 2 recommendations, 2 commendations, all depending on the time you have, depending on the speakers that come up to speak. If the speaker is not a seasoned speaker, be reminded you can reduce the recommendation, increase the commendations if you notice those things. If the speaker is a very seasoned speaker, you can increase the recommendation and reduce the commendations because time may not permit to give as many commendations and as many recommendations that you observe. This is very important. Note when giving evaluations, you need to do it in such a manner that it's very encouraging. Your demeanor should be clear that you love the effort that was given by the speaker. Regardless of the quality from your perspective of the speech, you should be good enough to get good aspects of that speech, and your delivery should clearly show that you loved what you heard. If nothing else, the simple fact that they came out to speak, that is worthy of commendations. Try your best not to come in such a manner that you're so disappointed in the speech. In fact, you could not really pick anything that was good in the speech. Please, if you are giving evaluation for table topics, as much as feasible, refrain from this. You want to do it in such a manner that the speaker is, 1, encouraged to keep speaking, and 2, encouraged to come back better based on the feedback that you give them at that point. Give the feedback to the first speaker, second, third, as many as feasible. Have your conclusion, and then you hand back control to the Toastmaster of the day, and your evaluation is done. Note when you're doing table topics evaluation, it means you need to be familiar with what a good speech should look like. Pay attention to all those elements: the introduction, the body, the conclusion, the infusion of emotions in the speech. Did they use stories? The confidence that they displayed when they spoke, were they eloquent or otherwise? What about the way they were dressed? Was it appealing to the eye? Was it distracting in any way? Their use of body language. Every element of a speech that is worthy of commendation, pay attention to those areas. It means if you're familiar with that, you also know when they are not doing it well. Those are the areas you give as feedback for recommendation. In summary, that is what you do as a table topics evaluator. Before the meeting, during the meeting. I'm going to remind you once again, if time permits, you can briefly give feedback to the table topics master. Did they pick topics that were apt based on the theme of the meeting? Were they engaging? Did they encourage speakers to come forward and speak? Did they actually get volunteers before that segment, or were they trying to get volunteers during that segment? And all these things were addressed when we're addressing the table topics master roles. You can give feedback on all these if time permits, but if it does not, please prioritize evaluating the speaker. Any questions when it comes to the role of table topics evaluator, which is a very, very important role to play at your meeting, especially when it comes to engaging guests, but also for our members. Any questions, you can type in the chat box, or you can raise your hands if you have any questions or comments for those of you that have points that will be useful to the rest of us in this room based on your experience. Toastmaster Ruben, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster John. Good day, everyone. I once was given the privilege to be a table topic evaluator at a meeting sometime few weeks ago, and the person said the general evaluator commented that the table topics evaluator is supposed to just give feedback in 30 seconds max per speaker and should never exceed 5 minutes, or irrespective of the number of speakers. So even if you have four speakers. And while I did check online and see some lingo, but there wasn't anything on Toastmasters website. And the person was really arrogant in sharing this and very authoritative. So I thought to ask if you've heard or seen any of this in the past with your experience, and if there's a way to strike a balance if this is actually true. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Toastmaster Ruben. It is very important to communicate with whichever club you're going to play any role to find out how they do things in their meeting. I am not familiar with any role close to what was stated by that person that played the role of general evaluator. And as I've stated personally, it is not very effective to state that you must do evaluations in 30 seconds and under 5 minutes, regardless of the number of table topics we have for that meeting. It means that if we just have a table topic marathon and we happen to have 15, 16, who knows how many the table topics marathon for that meeting can take, you have a maximum of 5 minutes. It doesn't seem very effective. Nonetheless, you are going to serve the club, find out their rules. You can give them your feedback, but if this is the way they operate, as best as you can follow the rules, I recommend that you pay attention to that and respect their way of doing things. You can try and speak to them afterwards or lead them to someone that they may listen to afterwards. But you are a guest role player in that club at the moment. I do not think it was actually something that we do generally, or it's the standard of Toastmasters International. Oh, you stated that general evaluator was not from the club. That's very interesting. I don't doubt what the general evaluator said because I've gone to a lot of meetings that I see the same timing for table topics evaluator, regardless of how many table topics they take. I played the role of table topics once, table topics evaluator once at a different club. And because they were enjoying table topics, and I'm not surprised, I love table topics. I think it's the best part of a meeting for me. The table topics master said, please, can we take more speakers? Timer, do we have time? And timer said, yes. They took one, they took two. And I was thinking, the more speakers they take, the more time I need for table topics evaluation. However, they did not extend the time for table topics evaluation. Nonetheless, I had to curtail my feedback for each individual, and I gave the feedback afterwards to the Vice President Education that if you're going to permit more table topic speakers, regardless of the time, because they already overshot the time, you need to remember that what happens there is going to affect the table topics evaluation. Just keep this in mind whenever you're saying, yes, let's go on, let's go on. So I gave the feedback afterwards. It may not be feasible to change anything beforehand. Respect the club, but Toastmasters International Standard, I don't think that's a thing. Yeah. If anyone has any question or comment regarding the role of table topics evaluation, and if it's as pertinent as what Toastmaster Ruben said, please, I would love to hear from you. But we're going to quickly finish the general evaluator role, and then at the end by 9:30, we can take your questions and comments. Now we're going to the role of general evaluator. Very important. Toastmaster Ruben just gave us a lovely foundation to start the role of general evaluator. Note, the general evaluator is responsible for all the evaluation at that specific meeting. What does this mean? Speech evaluation, table topics evaluation, R counter, timing, grammarian, everything that has to do with evaluation of what occurs in the meeting, the general evaluator is responsible for that. And I'll break this role into three parts: before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting. Before the meeting, you need to pay attention to, First, is it your club or a different club? If it's your club, my assumption is you're familiar with how the meeting flows. If it's not your club, please get in touch with the Vice President of Education, find out, maybe get a past agenda that they've used. How does your meeting run? When is table topics? When is the evaluation? When is prepared speeches? Find out the flow of that specific meeting. For some clubs, they have general evaluator calling out the speech evaluators earlier on. For others, it's later on. Know the program and how it works for that specific club. Very important. Now, because you're leading a team of people, you should reach out to these people. Speech evaluators, are they ready? Do they have the evaluation slips for the people they are going to be evaluating? Table topics evaluator, do they know how to play their roles? Are they familiar with it? Each time you find out and they know, fantastic. If they don't know, if you can assist, then do that. If you can give them links from TI, anywhere, do that. If you can recommend that they meet up with their mentors and you know their mentors are equipped to help them, you can do that as well. Meet up or speak with your team as well. Our counter, timer, grammarian. Do they know how to play their roles? Are they prepared? Have they rehearsed? Do they need any assistance from you? These are some things that you should do before the meeting. Also, if you happen to be introducing anyone, note it's different for different clubs. Find out from that club, who does the general evaluator introduce? Then familiarize yourself with the introduction. Know how to pronounce the names, get it from the actual person you're going to be introducing. Either memorize the evaluation or read it and get comfortable with it. This will ensure that when you're reading it from the stage, it seems natural. And at the minimum, you know if this is a man or woman. Please don't go there introducing this fantastic man, handsome gentleman. You go on, and this beautiful woman walks up. Please don't do that. Know who you're going to be introducing in advance. Finally, tell your team to show up early to the meeting. Not on time, early to the meeting. Why is this important? At every meeting, before the meeting starts, we tend to confirm, and we should, that everybody is present. Everyone playing a role should be there early. Why? It helps them settle, one, get ready, acclimatize with wherever you're going to be playing the role. But it also ensures that if you need to replace anyone, you can do that before the meeting commences. Some people may have to play 2 or 3 roles. Toastmasters, we wear many hats. It's okay. It's great training. Some others that were not expecting it, members in the meeting, may need to be approached by the general evaluator and asked, are you willing to play the role of grammarian? It's great training. It's easy. This is the word of the day. This can only happen in advance if you know people are not going to show up, because you told them, please show up 30 minutes before, 15 minutes before, whatever you agreed upon for that specific meeting. It makes it easy to get replacements based on your agreement. All this before the meeting. During the meeting, what happens? As a general evaluator, even before the meeting commences, you're paying attention to everything. First, if you're not familiar with what it takes to have a good meeting, please do not play the role of general evaluator. At least familiarize yourself to an extent of what a good meeting looks like. If it's physical or hybrid, in the physical space, you're looking, what is the room like? Do we have banners properly displayed? Directions to get to this room? Can anyone see it? Those little things, you start paying attention to them. If for whatever reason the meeting is starting late, were people in the meeting informed early enough by the Toastmaster of the day, the Vice President of Education, whoever is responsible? Were they also engaging people in advance? Then, what time did the meeting start? Early or late? Pay attention to all this. How were the introductions done? The speakers, did they seem well prepared? The speeches, did they align with the theme? What about table topics? As a general evaluator, everything that transpires at the start, in fact, before the start of the meeting, during the course of the meeting, to the point you're giving your report, you pay attention to it. Our standard meetings commence like this. The Sergeant at Arms kicks off the meeting, introduces the president, who hands off to the Toastmaster of the day, who introduces you. Now you come up and you have a speech prepared. Anytime you're playing any role, please prepare your speech in advance. As a general evaluator, what are you responsible for? You're in charge of leading the team that does the evaluation. Evaluation is very important to help everyone grow, not just at a linear rate, but at an accelerated rate. Then you introduce your team members, timer, grammarian, accountant, or other members. Like, I think there's a joke master for certain clubs, listening evaluator. It depends on the club you're going to, and give them proper introductions. Introductions are very powerful because it encourages the speaker to come up with confidence, and it enables the audience to listen to what the speaker has to say, because you have laid the framework to tell us this person is worth listening to. When your team introduces themselves, tell us what they're going to do, not introducing themselves, excuse me, tell us about their roles, what they're going to do. They hand back control to you. Tell the audience you're going to come back at the end of the meeting to give your reports, and then you go back to observe the meeting. For this particular example, my assumption is that the next time you're coming back to our screen or the lectern is at the very end, the evaluation portion of the meeting. During the meeting, all you're going to be doing is observing what we're doing right, areas of improvement, until you come back at the evaluation portion of the meeting. And then you start calling all the evaluators, prepared speech evaluators, table topics evaluator, and then your core team, timer, accountant, grammarian. If that's how that club does it. Once again, different clubs operate different systems. Familiarize yourself with how they operate. Once all your team members have given their evaluations, you give your final evaluation report, which is the general evaluation report. Commend, recommend, commend. I usually say the general evaluator should have minimum of 5 minutes if time permits, which ideally will give you sufficient time to give your full report. If it doesn't, prioritize what you give feedback on. Give your recommendations, areas to improve, and suggestions on how to improve on those areas, and you finalize with commendations. You can then have a conclusion to end your general evaluator report. Once that's done, your responsibility for the meeting is concluded. But as I said earlier, before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting, there are certain things you should do. So what do you do after the meeting? After the meeting, as a team lead, I recommend you reach out to your team members and just appreciate what they did. The effort they took to be well prepared was very useful to the meeting. It ensured that you had the right ambience and gave people things to take back to help them improve. Appreciate them so they want to do better and come back and serve again. You are leading the team. The responsibility is yours as the general evaluator. That is my recommendation. And I say, call, meet in person, or do a voice note, because if they miss the element of that vocal variety, that intonation when you're speaking, it's so different from typing. My recommendation, you don't have to do it that way. If all you can do is type, by all means, but I feel please appreciate them. In summary, that is what you get to do as the general evaluator. Note, I don't recommend that if you're not familiar with how the meeting flows and what makes a good meeting, that you play that role. But once you're familiar with it, regardless of your experience, I believe you can play the role with sufficient preparation. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding the role of general evaluator? You can type in the chat box, you can raise your hands and ask your question or give your comments that will help our understanding of the role of general evaluator.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Toastmaster Stephen. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, sometimes some of these role players are not clear with um enumerating their roles. For example, the timekeeper, he might not mention the accurate time for each session. But because of time, we are also trying to manage time. Is it best practice to reiterate what they said, or you can just overlook it because of time?
Toastmaster Stephen, if I understand you, you're saying that sometimes other role players may not have played their roles well. Should the
Yeah.
general evaluator now state the proper thing? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
fantastic question. I love the fact that you mentioned because of time. If time does not permit, general evaluator should prioritize what they give feedback on. If time permits, the general evaluator can give feedback on those aspects that their team members missed or made an error in. It happens. We're human beings. That's why we're playing the roles to get better. That is the time to make this mistake so we can go back and say, okay, I was wrong. How can I get it right? And you play it again. It's really a factor of time, as you stated. Always prioritize. Start from the most important and continue less important to the least important based on what time permits. Does that help, Toastmaster Stephen?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Fantastic question. Dear Toastmasters, it is now 9:30 and I am a respecter of time. I believe time is your most precious resource. It is way more valuable than money. And I would like to respect and honor the promise that 9 to 9:30 is what we have for this section. Officially, we are done. Feel free to leave, rest, whatever else you're going to do, dance, relax for those of you still going out, have dinner for those of you that have not eaten. But if you still have questions or comments, I will still be here and I am open to taking more. But as I stated, we are done and you can leave till next Friday when we'll be covering 2 other roles. And if they are relevant to you, I would love to see you here again. By the way, if any of you want to practice how you train, you are welcome to reach out to me and come and give this training here. It's another opportunity to practice, make your mistakes, share your knowledge with people. You are more than free to come and anchor it so people are not bored with just seeing my face and hearing my voice. We want to see your face as well and hear your voice. We're done. If anyone has any other questions or comments, you can raise your hand, you can type, and we address it, or we'll just say until next week, or for those of you I'm going to see tomorrow, until tomorrow. Any other questions, any other comments? It does not have to focus on these 2 roles that we took care of tonight, table topics evaluator, general evaluator. You can speak on others that maybe you're playing this weekend or next week. You are all very much welcome. Thank you for joining.
Okay,
Sorry.
so Toastmasters. Okay, somebody's going. Okay, let me chill.
Okay.
Yes.
You can go, sir. Maybe after you
Okay, Toastmaster
finish.
Francis. Toastmaster Steven said you can go, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Toastmaster Stephen, for yielding anchor to Toastmaster Francis, the small Toastmaster Francis. Okay, it's related to the question you asked, Toastmaster Stephen, and from that I will relate it and push the question to our mentor of mentors, Toastmaster John. So, is it advisable? Let's assume we have ample time. Is it advisable for the general evaluator to correct his team member at the lectern? Is it advisable, or you do that privately or subsequently?
Thank you so much for that, Toastmaster Francis. Very relevant question. Is it advisable for the general evaluator to correct their team members from the lectern or afterwards one-on-one? I think it's a question of what the error is in regards to, for instance, if the grammarian is correcting certain pronunciations, certain words usage, use of tense, and they're giving that feedback to people. Remember, in an ideal situation, people are listening to what we're saying, taking that feedback and applying that feedback. If it is wrong, the general evaluator, my recommendation is that that should be corrected from the stage. So those individuals can take the corrected feedback, go back and improve upon it. Now, if it's something that just really pertains to the role player, it's not affecting other people, then I think the general evaluator can overlook that and address it afterwards. Maybe if it's an issue of how you display your cards, for instance. I observed that you forgot to display the green, you just jumped to the yellow and then the red. Those type of things that don't really impact the individual taking the feedback to make themselves better, I think they can be overlooked. But once it affects other people, the general evaluator, my recommendation is please address it right there. Let people get the right information to the best of your ability. None of us are perfect, which is why we're here. We know that we're not perfect. We know we need to improve. But when someone starts stating things that you know at that point to be wrong, please address it so we don't come as Toastmasters to make other people worse because they attended our meeting. Does that help in any way, Toastmaster Francis?
Yes, it does. Thank you again and again.
You're welcome. Toastmaster Stephen, please, you may go ahead if you still have a question, unless Toastmaster Francis addressed what you were thinking of.
Yeah, he elaborated on my question earlier, but I just want to. I'm thinking now logically, should the president play the role of a general evaluator? Because most times the president and the vice president education are the one, should I say, presiding over the meeting, giving roles to people. And at the end of the meeting, the general evaluator is going to hand over to the president after he has given his feedback on the meeting. Is it best practice for the president to play that role? I'm just curious to know, because it's a role that there was no other choice. I have to play it tomorrow. But going forward, is it something that we could continue with? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Toastmaster Stephen. I'm glad that we have some other experienced Toastmasters here. I'll give my opinion because I've not really seen any rule against this. I highly recommend that the president continue to play roles and continue to give speeches, including the role of general evaluator. Regardless of if you're the president, you're the vice president of education, you're the secretary, you're a member, we are here to learn, grow, network. We are here to get value. And if one of those values that you're trying to get from Toastmasters is to improve, then you should play those roles as well. I have unfortunately seen in many situations where once someone becomes a president, that is essentially the end of speaking, other than giving their presidential speech and playing roles. But it ought not be. Presidents still should be growing. The biggest room in the world, they say, is the room for growth. It is perfectly acceptable from my perspective for the president to play the role of general evaluator, Toastmaster of the day, or any other role at the club meetings. That's my perspective. Now, other experienced Toastmasters that are here in the room, if you have a different perspective, it would be great that you share. But Toastmaster Stephen, that's my perspective. Please, as the president, don't think that you have been put into one corner where you cannot play certain roles or give certain speeches. You are here to grow. In fact, the more the president grows, I believe is an inspiration to others that see what is happening. if somebody is able to live their best lives, that usually inspires other people to also live their best life. That's my perspective. And Toastmaster Francis has written in the chat box that he also concords. Toastmaster Stephen, does that help?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please enjoy playing the role of general evaluator tomorrow. Learn as best you can from it. Yes, Seaside Toastmasters, I assume Toastmaster Kudus, perhaps. You may go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Toastmaster John. I think the where Toastmaster Stephen was coming from is, since the president is the one who organized the meeting, he may not be able to see the things to improve in such meetings. But I still think when you wear the cap of the general evaluator, you at that point, because you are wearing that cap, you are more observant. And if it's someone that notices things a lot, definitely you will still see things that you yourself did not do well, and you are going to be able to give yourself such feedbacks. So I will still very much agree that the president should also play that role. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Kudus, for shedding light on that perspective and the question that Toastmaster Stephen stated. Now, what you shared, if the president is part of those that plan the meeting is usually planned and given in an agenda. This is how we want the meeting to go. My view is, because the president was part of those, assuming the president was part of those who planned the meeting, you had a clear vision for how you wanted the meeting to be. Now, when the meeting occurs, you can see the disparity between how you wanted it to be and what actually transpired. For instance, because I planned a meeting does not mean I cannot distinguish between 12 and 12:10. I can, regardless of who planned the meeting. I can say we wanted it to start at 12. It started 10 minutes behind schedule. Wanted people to be here early. People didn't show up early. Regardless of if you planned it or not, in fact, because you planned it and you've had forethought on how you wanted it to go, more so than a lot of people that just show up not thinking about everything that went into planning, so we have a quality meeting, you may be better equipped to notice things that don't go according to plan. That's just a different perspective. But I love the fact that you shared that. It gave me a different angle for where Toastmaster Stephen may be coming from. But note, it does not deny the fact that you can and may be better equipped to see what does not tally with the intention you had when you were planning the meeting. And one of the things, I don't know how many of us showed up for last week's session, planning the agenda. Many of us don't know how to plan an agenda well. Most of the time, if I see your agenda, I can tell you if that meeting is most likely not going to keep to time, just based on looking at your agenda. So many minuscule elements of the agenda, seemingly not well planned, will throw off your meeting. You start chunking different elements of the meeting, prepared speeches, 30 minutes, table topics, 20 minutes, evaluation, 30 minutes, without thinking about how many speakers we have in the meeting, without thinking about how many people want to do or call up for table topics. If you're not looking at those singular elements, considering the transition time for each one, your meeting has no hope of being a good meeting, not even close. But people that have learned how to plan a meeting properly and actually implement it, then they are more prepared to have a great meeting. And ideally, if people pay attention to what went wrong, get the feedback, implement it, the next meeting is going to be so much better. Unfortunately, it does not always happen. Sometimes clubs where the meeting always goes overboard, 10, 20, 30 minutes, it's the same consistent thing that continues to happen. The same errors that they've been making, they continue to happen repeatedly. That means we're not learning from what has happened in the past. And that is bad. It should be rectified. Please, if you are here and those type of things happen in your meeting, if you're an exco, please, you need to have a meeting and say, how can we stop this and actually take action to stop this? Most of these things are very little things, but it is feasible. Any other questions or comments? Once again, you can type in the chat box, you can raise your hands. We are done. Let me state that again. We are done for today. We're just addressing other things that you may have and you want to talk about or you want to share. And if there's none, then we'll end this meeting and maybe see next week Friday, or a few of you, I'll be seeing you tomorrow at Toastmasters meeting. I don't see any questions. I don't see any hands raised. I encourage you, if you've not played any of these roles and you are in a position to play them, please do. We tend to learn best by doing, not by listening or reading, by doing. When you take action, that's when you begin to understand certain things that it's said. That's when you can actually grow and you can challenge yourself. We've paid. I'm assuming we're all Toastmasters. You might as well get the most value for what you have paid. Sign up for these roles. And if you want a room somewhere where you can speak more, you can learn how to train a bit more, you can reach out to me if you want to handle one of these roles. This platform is very much available to you as well. Thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully, be back here Friday. If the roles are relevant to you, then you can join us. We start at 9, as long as there's a single individual here and we're done by 9:30. Beyond, we just address other issues like we're doing right now. Everyone enjoy your weekend and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Tim John, and do have a great weekend too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank
Semi
you.
Bello.
Welcome.
How are you doing?
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Good night.
Welcome. Take care, everyone.
Though my network did not allow me to enjoy this very well, but thank you. Bye.
Bye.